Welcome to episode number 15 of the Golden Handcuffs Guy podcast. I interview Chris Hake in this podcast, and he talks about why being a millionaire isn't all it's cracked up to be. But he doesn't just leave there. He tells you how to do that to get what it's all cracked up to be without becoming a millionaire. Yeah, becoming a millionaire is still great, but he talks about to get what it is that he was really after.
Is it going to be something that builds? Is it going to be a life-giving interaction in some big or small way? Or are they just going to be an accessory or even an obstacle?
Get yourself uncomfortable. Do something that makes you not want to be there.
Dude, I can't even imagine thinking the way that I used to think.
We were living parts of our vision and we wanted more of it.
Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Reese. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Yeah, this is good. I'm excited to get you on here. So a little bit of brief background. I'll let Chris tell the rest of his story. But Chris was my first coach, and he really set me off on a journey to get to where I'm at today. And so that's why I'm excited to pick his brain a little bit and share some of his experience as well with everybody. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you're doing now?
All right. So we're switching the table today. So I'm on the other side now.
Exactly.
All right. I love it. Well, thanks for having me, Reese. I know the first time you kind of reached out and said, "Hey, I'm getting a podcast going, and can we make something happen?" I know we tried a few times, didn't work out, so I'm glad it finally made it, and we'll get some out there. So. With regard to myself, where I'm at today or longer ago?
Well, just today, and we can get back into how you got there. But.
Okay. Yeah. Today I run a RIA here in Madison, Real Estate Investor Association, for those of you that don't know the acronym RIA. And been doing that. I think I started that about 7.5 years ago, 2012. And that's been going great. We've got a lot of good things going on. 2020 looks exciting. We've got almost 350 members and our own facility with offices and conventions, or more of a convention conference room training facility, which has been really, really cool. It's nice to have a base camp and not have to move around from hotel to hotel. So been doing that. That's been great. Just about 7-8 months ago, picked up a apartment building, 32 units. And that was fun, really kind of a shift for the last couple of years, getting back to really where I started back in the 90s with multifamily and apartments or rental property. So that's been kind of cool, different experience. It was more of a syndication, so that's got a whole nother spin to it on how I did that. But that's been a lot of fun and definitely my love of coaching. You know, I love coaching and working with young men and women, old men and women, single, married, it doesn't matter. You know, really anybody who's looking to kind of take the next step and get to a place that maybe has been elusive for them, a place that, you know, their job's not where they want it to be, or their, you know, finances aren't where they want to be, or just life in general isn't where they want to be. And working with younger folks, I like that because now my age and the years that I've kind of spent, you know, going through all the different things that I've gone through, it's kind of neat to reflect and watch a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old, you know, where they are today and watching them grow and take the next step. And hopefully, you know, I can add some value to them on their path.
Yeah. I can say, you know, when I was working with you, it was great. You know, exactly what you just said. I think I was 25 when I was working with you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the great thing about you, Reese, and you know, I think that unfortunately a small percent of people out there is, you know, they're hungry. I mean, they want to do it and they're coachable, which makes all the difference in the world. You know, there's a lot of people that are just status quo. They're just kind of going day to day. And it's really hard to help somebody who doesn't have a big why and they don't have a vision for what they want to do. Even if they don't know how to get there, you just know, you can tell when you meet people, that the ones that are hungry and they've got a bigger dream and they're willing to go out and do what most people aren't willing to do to get there. And you and Ashley were definitely two of those people. And yeah, that's been great. And I enjoy meeting more of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of that journey had a lot of stuff you got going on right now. Let's talk a little bit about how you got to that point? I mean, I'm sure the real estate and the coaching really tie hand in hand with, especially with the RIA right now. But how did you even decide to land on real estate investing to begin with?
Yeah, wow. That's a great story and a long one. And for today, we'll cut her short and just kind of give you the bullet points. But back when I got out of school, I was definitely not a school guy. I did not like conventional, traditional school. I got through high school, got out the other side, and really at that point, I mean, all of us at 17 and 18, we sit in front of our guidance counselor and we have that big conversation about what do you want to do with your life and where do you want to go next after high school. And for me, there were three answers. It was either the military, it was college, or it was go get a job and make, at that time, probably $4 an hour. And, for me, I knew I didn't want to go out and start working. I just was not ready to do that. And I didn't even really know what that meant. I just know I didn't want that. And the thought of the military at that time, at that age of my life, scared the heck out of me. I still remember that. And so it was college. And the crazy thing was I hated high school, and college was my choice. And boy, at 17, I made that decision, not really knowing. I think a lot of us, unfortunately, go through that when we're younger. And, I went off to college and I had no purpose, no reason other than that was what everyone else did. So, I followed the herd. And I went to college for a couple of years, didn't really work out. I wasn't a really studious person at the time. I knew I was a hard worker and smart, but I just wasn't dialed into school. And spent 2 years there, left, kind of quit school, college. I went to one of the universities here in Wisconsin, and I ended up going back home and started working. My dad helped me find a job with a friend he had who owned a survey company, and I remember it vividly. I spent that next year, and it was one of the worst snowy years that I can remember as a young man. And I was a surveyor and a grunt surveyor on a survey crew, working outside, holding a rod while the guys who were smart and got to work all the cool equipment, Chris, go stand out in the field that's 3 feet of snow, in the middle of all day long and, shoot measurements for sidewalks and curb and gutter and roads and all that stuff on a 100-acre development. And it's, I just remember that thinking, wow, this really isn't a good way to think of the rest of my life, making $5 an hour, $4 an hour out in the middle of the freezing cold and doing this all winter long. And that really kicked me in the butt. And I ended up going back to school, just a tech school here for 2 years after a year of, making the big $4, $5 an hour and working my butt off. And I ended up going to a tech school and it was basically, I kind of, again, didn't have a vision. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody guiding me. I just did what I thought I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I ended up, oddly enough, or not, going to school to get a 2-year degree in the field of being a surveyor, which is crazy because I didn't know anything about surveying. I just happened to work it. But I knew if I went and got schooling, I could probably do something more than just hold a rod and sit out in the middle of a field. So I ended up doing that, spent 2 years doing it. Great. I got out the other side. And I got out the other side and I had some debt. Obviously, we get school debt. I paid for it. And I got out the other side and I went to work for a company doing surveying stuff. And I wasn't happy right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started self-educating and started learning things that I wanted to do for me instead of what the world kind of sent me down that path and just followed everybody else. And so my very first business back, oh boy, that was probably 1990 now, probably 1990, is I was working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, like probably most people do when they get out of school. And I ended up joining a network marketing or a multi-level marketing type company. And that was my first thrust into Chris becoming a business owner. And I really didn't even know what that meant other than if I was told that if they would train me, if I worked hard, I could make extra money. And that was the first time I ever heard the phrase, the 40 hours you work for your job pays the bills and everything after that creates wealth.
Mhm.
And so I'll never forget that. And that's when I was, again, 20, I don't know, 21, 22, something like that. And that's when I started reading books, and I started learning that I needed to start doing some of those other things on my time. And that kind of set me down a path, really, again, many years ago. But over the years, then over the next, decade or so, as I got into some different businesses and continued to have some jobs here and there, working for different companies. I was always a hard worker. I was never afraid of that. But I got bitten by the millionaire bug back in about 1991. And that sent me on a path at the time I thought was what everybody was trying to do, to be a millionaire. Wow, that word, and just the thought of having all this money, and now you have no problems and the world's great and life can be perfect.
Mhm.
That's what I thought. And, all these companies are toting all the different ways to make money and millions, and you see people on stage doing it. And so I followed that because I didn't know any different.
So
And,
it's
it's interesting now looking back on that. That's the farthest thing that I talk to people about today, because of my experiences, hoping to help other people maybe see it from a different perspective, which I think you fully know that from our meeting when we met.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So you started with, "Hey, I don't like this job that I'm doing, but I really don't know what it is. I don't have this vision for my life yet of what I'm really after and trying to pursue." So you just took the next best thing that was going to make it not be miserable anymore, but you were still not happy with what you were doing. But when you turn that focus inward to improve yourself, you got at least a little bit of clarity of where to go next.
Yeah. Well, and the cool part about that was, and it's something still to this day, the network marketing and multi-level, there's a million of them out there. And for me, that was such a great inroad to learning about business, and to have an education and a system kind of set up a path, and really kind of where I started getting some of my first coaches and mentors. I don't know that I'd call them mentors, but at least someone to help guide me and really inspire me, and to help motivate me in a positive way.
Mhm.
And I remember that in great detail, because I was the guy in high school and college that I literally was dropping out of classes because I had to do one oral presentation. And the thought of standing in front of a class with 20, 30 people and even doing a 5-minute speech, I mean, just sent me down to rubble. I couldn't, I really had such a fear of that. It was unbearable. And what happened was, when I got into the multi-level or the network marketing, and starting to read books about, different subjects in history and English. I mean, I was more motivational, personal development type books, but they kind of forced me to get out of my comfort zone, which I hated them at the time for it. But now I couldn't be more happy that somebody pushed me to get out of my comfort zone, and they challenged me. And that got me in front of the first person, and then 2 people, and then on a whiteboard in front of 5 people, and then 10, 15. And oh yeah, I was sweating in the armpits and the face and the whole thing, and nervous as could be. But what it did is it got me a little bit more comfortable, a little more confident every time that I did that. And I don't know what else would have ever really helped direct me and guide me into that space to help me, because I didn't really know what I didn't know. I was just trying to go forward, and so that was a great place for me to start, and it pushed me to think like an entrepreneur, to go out and be able to do things above and beyond the multi-level or the network marketing businesses, which just gave me the spark enough to kind of kickstart me to open my eyes more, and to be more open, very much a sponge to being coachable, right? To go in and help and work with other people, but listening to other people that I thought knew more than me or were in a better spot than I was.
Mhm.
So
So you definitely learned a lot of good business lessons for that to set you on your path for being a business owner. But you mentioned this millionaire bug. Did that kind of taint your success or what you were capable of actually doing, or what was this millionaire bug impact on what you were doing?
Yeah, it was huge because it really, I was so hyper focused on becoming a millionaire that everything I did, at this point, I'm meeting my wife to be, and, we're looking at getting married and starting a family and having kids. And I did all that, and we have tons and tons of great memories, but there's also some things that I very, very much missed out on. And I always chalked it up to, I'm going to work hard now, I'll get to be a millionaire, and then we'll be great. And we know how that story ends, and in general, right? For I think many, many, many people, because that is, man, that's a road that's got a lot of detours, and it's got a lot of bumps and pits and all sorts of stuff in it, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. That does not define happiness or prosperity or any of that. And even though, I was cranking through all that, I mean, I'm learning. I felt like I was growing as an individual, but the little things that I covet now, that I value now, the experiences and the relationships and time with family and friends, and just, downtime. I didn't know what downtime was. I mean, I would probably say for almost a 20-year period, I easily was working 70, 80 hours a week for probably almost 20 years. But I didn't think twice about it. It didn't even register like, wow, I'm busy, I can't do something. I was just always working, because that was my mission, that millionaire bug. That was the carrot that kept driving me. And, I finally, after going through the 90s and buying rental properties and the different businesses that I was starting, I finally I think it was 2003 or just the beginning of 2004, finally, I'm a millionaire. I got $1 million net worth. Awesome. I made it to the top of the mountain. Now what? And everyone knows what the next line is on that is, okay, now it's got to be 2 million. And then it's got to be 5 million. And when is enough? And there was no enough. I just kept going and going. And, it's, again, at the time, you don't really see the things happening around you. You're in the box. So I saw the four walls, and I was cranking forward, and, or take the kids, we're going on trips and all this great stuff, and had a great house on a golf course and all the toys and fun stuff. And yeah, that's great. At the time, it was awesome. But then the reality of everything hit, and the perspective change for me was 2007 and 8. And we all know what happened in 2007 and 8 when the markets just buckled in real estate. And between 2003 and 4, when, I finally hit that level, the bug bit me on the millionaire. We rode that for about 3 years and just kind of kept going. And because of the way I built my real estate and all the things, again, that I was learning and following others, I just got blinded. And I got blinded by the millionaire mindset. And when 7 and 8 hit, it just literally collapsed everything.
So why do you think that was, that you got blinded by that, and not that you were, the $1 million, being a millionaire didn't allow you to ride through that?
Because I was leveraged so heavily. So what I was learning at the time when I was going through different training courses, and I was literally flying all over the country, going to different seminars and 3-day boot camps and investment universities, and going and seeing speakers, because I really didn't have much in my area. So I was traveling to go to find the people that I wanted to learn from. And what I was learning during those years was, boy, buy that property, leverage it up, take the money back out and go buy more. Leverage it up, take the money out, go buy more. And that model killed me, because my house of cards wasn't on a very good foundation. And so when the market shifted, and there's whole other stories that go with where I was with the real estate, but I had a lot of real estate, millions and millions of dollars of real estate, but I had millions and millions of dollars of debt. And so when the tables turned and the market shifted and everything, shut down, basically, values started falling, jobs were hurt, people were losing, all that stuff. It was a perfect storm. Myself and many, many others that I know that were in similar boats, there's just too many holes. You can't plug them all. And for me, that happened very, very quickly. I mean, it came to a close in a matter of 90 to 120 days. I mean, that was right at the end of, I think, 2007 to 2000, beginning of 2008. And yeah, and it's, I teach on this all the time. People go, man, that must have sucked. And, how did you ever get through it? And it's interesting because of all the books that I used to read that people had me kind of studying and helping to develop myself. I kept reading about people that were so successful and then lost it all. And then they built it back up twice as fast as the first time because they now had experience and a different perspective or a mind shift from that occurrence happening. And so when that happened to me, when that day happened in end of 2007, it was weird because it was absolutely the worst day of my life and for my family and for everybody around. But on the other side of the same coin, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because that experience, taught me so many lessons, things that I was blind to that became just so crystal clear as I got on the other side and now was in this huge, huge hole of debt and all this other stuff that went with, the bankruptcies and foreclosures and all this stuff that I just dealt with for the next years after that. But it taught me to be a better person, to have a different mindset on what's important, better husband, father, friend, all of it. And it's something that I've been teaching from the front of the stage or the front of the room or one-on-one for, 12 years now. That was 2008. So that's 12 years now because that story, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of it. It happens to, many people, unfortunately. And it's allowed me to use it as a tool for hopefully letting people feel the pain a lot less painful from seeing and hearing what someone else went through. And hopefully that's enough to make them think differently as they go forward to maybe avoid that for themselves. Don't step on the same landmine. So teachable moments for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you climb out of that? I mean, learned a lot of lessons, but once you hit that bottom, I mean, you're kind of lucky that you didn't have to drag it out, that it all came down quick too. I mean, people wouldn't normally think that, like, oh no, you had to go through bankruptcy, but having it happen quick and fast and getting it over is a lot less painful than dragging on for a long time.
Yeah, that one happened really quick. And I literally, when I came out the other side, I mean, again, as I said, it was the worst thing ever and the best thing ever. At the time, I wasn't thinking the best thing ever, of course. It was, oh my gosh, I literally, everything except my house was either gone or was going to be gone very quickly. And so that was huge. And that was a big, big, big hole. And so I literally started out the other side going, all right, what do I have to do to now get out of the hole and keep going? And I jumped back into the world that I knew the best, and that was real estate. And I started again. Even with no money, I mean, it was a crazy time because it took money for some of the coaching and training and things that I wanted to do, because now our market had shifted from, the traditional things that had been taught and sold out there, lease options and rental properties. All of a sudden we're in foreclosures and auctions and REOs and short sales, and they were all over the place. The MLS was littered with properties. You could just kind of go pick and choose which one was the best one and go rehab it. And that's kind of what I started doing. I started really digging into short sales. I got into a training education program. And again, kind of a weird story, but one that I love to point out because it shows how big of a why and motivation I had at that time, because I had all these condos. I had ownership in all these condos when everything crashed on a big development project. And all these condos that we had were rental condos, but they weren't really being rented. And that's a whole nother episode. But all of them had all this custom furniture, all these wood log type furniture and appliances and everything. And so when I got an opportunity to find a group that I really wanted to associate with, they had a training package. Now today we think of them as the gurus, right?
Yep.
The rich dads and the fortune builders and all these other ones. There's a lot of them. You know, I mean, a lot of these, they're charging 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand to get into these packages. And at that time, the company that I was looking at, that was back in 2008. It was literally right after all this happened, was a real estate investment education company. And I ended up joining that. And that was, the price for entry was $21,000. And I literally just had gone bankrupt and lost everything. I did not have that money, none at all. But I had the desire and the motivation to figure out how I was going to get that, because I wanted to get back into the education mode. I was still taking action, but it was tougher. So I got the education by going back through these condos that were basically going back to the bank. We took out the furniture that was ours. And I still remember getting 2 moving vans, huge ones, 24 or 26 foot moving vans with about 5 guys. And we went one Saturday afternoon and drove up to the condos, and we literally stacked them and packed them full, took them back to my house. And at the time I had a big house with a 3-car garage, and I have a picture somewhere of it. It's really pretty remarkable. We filled the garage from front to back with furniture and appliances. And I literally put an ad on Craigslist or wherever I did at the time. We were going to have a garage sale. And I ended up selling, I think, about 90% of everything in that garage. And we raised about $23,000.
Perfect.
Just enough. And my wife, God bless her, she knew that I needed to get back in on the hunt. And so she, gave me the blessing to take that money and to pump it into the education. And I used that, and I started getting back into rehabs and, some rentals and apartment syndication with a company that I was doing some work for. So it really propelled me. But what I had to do to dig down deep to figure out a way to find money when there was absolutely no money was, a story in itself, because, I find sometimes you have to dig deeper, but you won't dig deeper if you don't have a burning reason, right? I mean, it won't happen. So yeah, that's, again, a whole nother story, Reese.
Okay. Well, so you were working with coaches and gurus before and taking courses, and your answer was to go take another course coming out of it.
Yeah.
Now, some people may see that and think, well, that doesn't really make sense, doing the same thing. But did you look at the values of what courses you were getting into differently after the lessons you learned in the crash?
Yeah, well, the biggest one for me was a leverage piece. So I came out knowing that, okay, to build a house of cards on a foundation that's built out of sand was ludicrous. Now, there's so many different ways to go down the path of real estate. And I knew when I got out, I wanted to get into buying and holding and started getting that cash flow going. But unfortunately, I still had so much debt and so many people I had to pay back that I got into rehabbing. So the methodology was buying REOs at the bank. I was buying, short sales, and we were buying auction properties for the purpose of buying them and flipping them, right? Doing the work, flipping them, get chunks of cash, and use that to not only live at that time, but to also pay down and kind of get out of this hole that I was in. And so I wasn't buying any rentals, but the education was really, I felt, I understood rentals. That was not a problem. But the short sale world, the foreclosure, REOs, that type of stuff, and to be honest, even the finer details of rehabbing, because I had never really done that per se prior to 2007. Everything was development stuff and rental properties. And I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I was relatively handy, and so I could fix stuff, but I never did my first rehab until I think 2009 after the crash. But it was all spurred on from the additional education. And, prior to about 2012, when I can really reflect back on my first true coach mentor in real estate. I had other ones who were folks out there that it was a different relationship of coaching and mentoring, more of you're part of a group, or you might have been to a 3-day boot camp, and now I can talk to the instructor, some people there, but it was a different relationship totally. And I think that is why I went back and picked up that education, and I wanted to associate. That was another big piece, Reese. And I find so many people are trying to do this business or any business, but real estate in our conversation, and they're on an island. They're trying to do it themselves, and that is so difficult, especially in real estate. I mean, you might get a couple deals and you might do a few things on your own, but that's going to be short-lived. I mean, this is a team sport, and I needed to be around other people who had that mindset. They were already doing stuff, because I was always trying to get around people who were doing at my level or above, and I wanted to shadow them, help them, offer my services to them to try to learn in exchange for maybe getting some of their time. And I did that for years. And so that's why I went back and spent the money, got additional education, for a couple new things that were happening that I just didn't understand, the short sales and foreclosures and that type of thing, but also the association. That was a big one.
So what did you do to foster that association once you noticed that was an important piece of it?
Well, when I got into those that big education company, there was enough people in Madison. So at that time, I was not. There was a RIA in town, but it was a really small investor group, and it just there wasn't a lot of people there, and so there really wasn't the level of people that I was finding I was getting enough benefit from, whether I was getting it from them or to help others. And so this group that I had joined into back in 2008, there started to be other people in my area that were joining the same group. And so all of a sudden, we started getting together and having meetings once a week, kind of like my RIA. This is back in, like I said, 2009-ish. And we started having meetings, I think I recall, every week. And that became the association. So the training, we would go down to Arizona for a week, and we would go to this University of Investing college, and there'd be thousands of people from all over the country. And that was awesome. I did that for 2 or 3 years, like 3 times a year. And it was awesome because of the association. Like you said, I was able to plug into people. Those people were many of them around the country, but we had a small group that was growing now in our local area in Madison. And so that became my association, my group, the network that we started creating here in Madison. And that was really the piece that started building that, because now I started, being able to hang out with people who were thinking of going after short sales or going down the road. And I started collaborating with other investors that were doing those same things. And that's really where everything kind of grew from, because if I would have just been sitting at home, flying around to seminars around the country and then coming back home and going, you know what, I'm just going to dig in by myself, it would have been short-lived, I believe.
Yeah. So you got these different pieces of the puzzle going at this point in 2011, 2012 timeframe. Earlier, you said that's when you started the RIA as well. Is that right? 2012? Yep. So that's another piece into the puzzle. How was all this fitting into what you were trying to achieve? The short sales, the rehabs, the associations, the RIA. What was it you were after at that point?
Well, so it's kind of 2 paths there. So one was my love of teaching and training. So something that I didn't really bring up. Between 2006 and 2010, I taught real estate investing at the college, at the college here in the local city, Madison. And that was awesome because at the same time I was going through these classes, I was actually going through the middle of my bankruptcy, foreclosures, losing everything. And I'm a teacher. And so it's kind of weird when I look back on that, but I mean, I loved doing that. It was part of their real estate degree program, and I taught the real estate investment class, 3-credit class for, I think, like 8 semesters, 4 years. And it ended in 2010 because just working within the academia world was not the platform that was working. I really wanted to help people at a deeper level, and I wanted to have more sharing of my resources, my contacts, my team, all the people that I knew in Madison. I was trying to bring them in when I was teaching lessons to be able to, when I talk about something in legal terms, well, I'd bring in my attorney and give him an hour and go, okay, I'm not an attorney, but hear it from the horse's mouth, right? And so I would do that with title companies and my CPA and my attorney and other investors that specialize, bankers. And so when that ended, that's kind of where I had a gap of about 1.5 years between 2010 and 2011-ish, up to 12. And that's when the RIA kind of, that opportunity came up, which ironically is the same exact time that I plugged into 2 of probably the most influential coaches I ever had in my world, Steve Cook and Sean McCloskey. And that's really where the life and air, component, again, I'm adding a whole nother piece in here, but all these things are happening at the same time in my world. And once I plugged into these guys, that's really where the whole concept of the RIA came about. And so that kind of sent me down that path to kind of plug in, because I really wanted somewhere where I could bring other investors together, again, the association, and that I could do what I love doing. And that's kind of giving back, teaching people, here's the things that have worked really well for me, but you know what? Here's the things that kicked me in the you-know-what. And hopefully I can teach in such a way that it'll give you guys a mental image that will be so burning bright that next time you see it, if you're down that path, hopefully you'll go the other direction and not have to learn the same way I did. That's a big, big goal of mine whenever I work with people, is hopefully I can help them avoid some of the things that I've had to go through.
So it's awesome. When you reach that point of like, hey, here's this purpose, here's the things I'm trying to connect in my work. It sounds like at that point you're still working 70, 80 hours a week to make all this work. Was that the case?
Yeah, I was. When I first met, so 2000, this is 2012, that's when I first met Sean and Steve. And oddly enough, I was at I was in another company where we put together a private placement memorandum. We raised $2 million, and we were looking to go buy a whole bunch of single family homes and rehab them, take the single model and do multiples and bring other money on board. And so we happened to do that in Arizona. And so I was flying down there to meet with my partners who were in Arizona. And at one of those times that I went down there, one of the things that we wanted to do to build our network and to meet more people was, let's go to the Arizona RIA, which happened to be the biggest one in the country. And we ended up going to a meeting, and that meeting I went to on that given night happened to have a speaker named Sean McCloskey, and he came and spoke. And sure enough, I'm sitting in the crowd, and he was talking about short sales, because that was Sean's kind of his game at that time. He was really, really good at it and teaching from it. And so he's talking about short sales, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, and there's a couple hundred people there. And all I could think about was, man, I've been through the short sale thing, and I hate short sales. And so I kind of dozed off, literally just like, all right, when he's done, I'll go to the next thing. And he got through about 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, this word popped up on his screen, and he started talking about life and air. And that woke me up for no other reason than it was different. I didn't know what it meant. And that was kind of that path, if you will, that was the next chapter in life. Because at the time, you're right, I was working 70, 80, 90 hours now, because this is after my crash, the crash. And so I was working harder than ever, and really getting burned out. And that's where the whole life and air came in. And I saw that as not real estate related, but life related, which I needed desperately at that time. And I was crying for it, screaming for it. And it popped up. I got to meet Sean that night. And literally that night when I had a conversation with Sean, met him for the first time, I come to find out that his business partner is Steve Cook. And Steve Cook lives in Baraboo, Wisconsin, which happened to be 45 minutes from my house. And oh, by the way, I had a rehab going on 5 blocks from Steve's house. So it was just like, did the stars align right there at that point in my life for the right reason, at the right time? It absolutely did. And so that kind of grew from there. And it took me a little while, Reese, to finally, someone said to me once, and it was actually, I believe, Steve or Sean, is, what was it exactly? It's not the fall that'll kill you, it's the splat. And they told me that as I was sitting around a small mastermind in 2012. And when they said that, I was the exact opposite. I was the guy that the fall was killing me. I was falling and falling ever since 7, 8, and now it's 2012. And I'm just trying to keep life together. I'm trying to keep my family together. I'm trying to keep, working as hard as I can to get out the other side. And it's 4 years later now. And I am getting out of the hole, but it's taking a long time. And I'm still just killing myself, and I'm missing life. And when they said that to me, that changed everything, because I was trying to avoid the splat. And what I needed to do was accelerate my fall so I could splat and start anew. And that's what I did. I literally left that meeting, that mastermind group in 2012 with Steve and Sean and about 10 others. And I went about life completely different, and started getting rid of the things that I thought I needed. If people hear that correctly, I didn't need all this stuff, and I still had, things that I was paying on that I just didn't need. And I had this big house that I absolutely was holding on to because I thought it was the best thing for my wife and kids. They would have gotten rid of that in a minute if I would have just probably had the conversation years before. So a lot of teachable moments in that whole thing. And I'm hoping that what people are hearing on this podcast, or the message is, again, the stuff doesn't define us. Many times it holds us back, because we end up, buying today and working all, the next 5 years just to pay for what we had 5 years ago. And I'm not talking about being a minimalist, but there's somewhere in between that, that's really a turning point. So it was a turning point for the RIA. That's when the RIA got started, 2012. That's a lot of defining things in 2012 that really shifted for me to keep going down a real estate path, which I loved, and a teaching and training now in the RIA and some coaching myself, but a different mind shift on how I was going to attack that. And it still hasn't been perfect, but boy, oh boy, it's been such a weight lifted off my shoulder ever since I hit the low point of my existence back in 2012 with some people now that, I call friends and mentors and coaches that I'll have forever. And it was a good experience.
That's awesome. And it's really kind of counter to what a lot of people would think, because you'd think, hey, life was going great. I had this successful RIA. I was getting started. I was teaching. I had my flips and my short sales, all that stuff, and it was going well for you. But at the same time, that was your golden handcuffs. Is like, I'm having to work 80 hours a week to be able to do that and hold it all together. And changing that and getting out of that was what allowed you to get your life back.
Yeah, and I think when you're in the moment too, it's tough. I always talk about being in the box, and you can only really see the four walls. And the tough thing is, if you don't have other people that can maybe look from a different perspective, they see all the stuff going around and, on the outside. And that perspective is just so valuable. It's we all need that in one way, shape, or form in many aspects of life. But that's what I was missing. I was very blinded to it, even when it was happening and people were telling me, this is what they see. It's like I knew it, but I just kept going down that road. And it was painful. It's like the story of the dog sitting on the front porch, and the dog's sitting there and he's howling, someone says, "Why is your dog howling?" And And, the dog keeps howling, and he goes, oh, he's sitting on a nail. I'm like, well, why is he sitting on a nail? And, he just keeps howling. All he has to do is get up and get off the nail, and the pain's gone. I just sat on that damn nail for so long because it didn't hurt bad enough. And I just kept thinking the way to get out is to work harder, and instead of smarter, and taking counsel, from others.
That's one of the biggest things I've heard Sean say that sticks with me is that lukewarm place is one of the worst places to be, because what motivation do you have to get out of it? It's not burning hot, it's not hurting you there, and it's not cold. You're not freezing there. You're just this lukewarm. Things are okay. They're not great.
You get complacent. It's easy.
Yeah. So, one story I remember when we were working together, you told us was about how you settled on your one thing. You remember what I'm talking about there?
I absolutely.
Walk us through that for a minute. I think it's so unique. I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing that.
Okay. Yeah, that and the one thing, the book, Gary Keller, Jay Papasan, I don't even remember when it came out. That was probably, I don't know, 2008 or 9 or somewhere around there. But the first time I read that book, that really shifted a lot for me, because I was the kind of person who every year I would do my goals, and I would take the last week or so of the year, and I would start looking at the next year. And I still have 20 years worth of my yearly goals and spreadsheets and all this stuff, short-term, long-term, mid-range, all that good stuff. And that's what I did. And oddly enough, I would get through every year and get to the next one, and then I would reflect back and look forward. And I was never hitting all my stuff. I was shooting high, which is good. And what happened was, when I read that book, what it got me to see differently was that when I reflected back on all the things that I had been doing over the years, and through the crashes and through the good times when I had, rental properties and all this other stuff, was that I always had a ton of irons in the fire. I always had irons. I was a realtor. I was a real estate investor. I had a RIA. I was coaching. I was speaking. I was having rentals. I was flipping. I was doing MLMs. I was still in networking marketing stuff because I have an association. I was doing all this stuff. Jack of all trades, master of none. And it was getting me, I was never after that in a terrible spot. My kids were healthy, our family's healthy, that stuff means more to me than anything. So that was great, but I wasn't still where I wanted to be, because I was still burning the candle, because I was trying to do everything, hoping one of them would hit, right? So the one thing got me to really hunker down. And I still remember it was back in, I think, 2012 or 13 now, that I did something I called my personal retreat. So it was my own 24-hour retreat. And every time I'd go to a mastermind session with my group, in my coaching group, I would always go a day early. And I would book a hotel room. I'd go in there by myself, and I would just basically put these huge 24 by 36 sheet Post-it notes all over the walls. And the very first time when I got through the book, Gary said something about taking all the things you have and narrowing it down from 100 down to 20, down to 10, down to 5, down to 2, down to 1. And for me, I never did that, because I always believed that I couldn't get rid of I couldn't get rid of, number 3 and number 4 and number 5, because they might work, or I'm working real hard at them and I don't want to throw it all away. But I was so ready to try something different. And after reading the book and then going and doing what he said, it was basically a brain dump or a mind sweep. I just took everything out and I plastered it on these walls, all over these Post-it notes. And what happened in that 24 hours, I told myself I wasn't going to leave that room until I came up with one thing. And I had to have a reason for the one thing, of whatever it was, business-wise. And so I literally started crossing stuff out and saying, well, if I did that, Dad, it would fit over here, and so on. And what happened was, by the next morning, I got down to one thing. And that one thing was my RIA. And at this time, my RIA, it was 2012, you're correct. And I know that because my RIA had started in the summer of 2012. And this was probably 3 or 4 months after that I did this exercise. And when I established that the RIA was where I was going to go focus, I probably had, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 members of the RIA that just got off the ground. And so from the information in the book, the purpose of having one thing is that the definition is if you do that one thing well enough, that it should impact and make everything else you're doing easier or non-essential, that it doesn't need to happen anymore. And so I ended up now hyper-focusing 100% every day on the RIA to make that the best it could be. And I came up with some different things with my little mastermind group. And over a 90-day period, I ended up jumping up from like 60 members up to 150 because I was just so focused. And what happened was the coolest part of all is that as I started doing that and focusing on the RIA, all of a sudden I started seeing opportunities from other people that were in the RIA that I was working so hard before trying to find leads. All of a sudden they were coming to my RIA and I'm the guy in the front of the room. So all of a sudden the real estate investor lead stuff started getting easier. And all of a sudden I started meeting people who had money and they wanted to be private lenders. Wow, I'm in the front of the room. I didn't even have to go look for them. I built an association and a relationship with them. And, I found wholesalers that had deals. And so that was less work I had to do to go out and lead generate to find my next deal. And it just kind of went around. And that center hub of my world became the RIA. And the spokes now were all the other irons I used to have in the fire. And they just started getting better and easier and less effort. And I was literally probably about a year into that. And I still just remember looking back on that, talking about it at one of our mastermind meetings, just how impactful that was, that exercise. I guess it was a test case because I was looking for something different. And so I tried it, even though in the beginning I didn't believe it would work, because how could you just do one thing and make other things better, without spending time on it. And sure enough, I proved myself wrong. That's how you remember it?
Yeah, that's
probably goes different ways, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, no, and it's awesome hearing that again, because I'd kind of forgotten some of the details, but that was the same realization I'd had and the same analogy too of like, hey, my one thing that I'm working on is a hub, and the spokes are everything else that I want to do. As long as I work on that, everything else supports it and makes that better. And so it's awesome that was the same analogy you had as well with it. So
yeah, and since that time, I think that was 12. So I've had 1, 2, 3. I'm actually on my 4th. That was almost 8 years now. So I'm on my 4th one that, you shift and adapt, and, you kind of get going and the system takes over. And it's like, all right, what's the next thing I want to just hyper focus on? And so it's always changing, but I can't recommend that enough to people. And I think the most critical part of the whole process was that mind dump, the brain dump that I had in, whether it's a hotel room or in your office or your back bedroom, it doesn't matter, but it has to be intentional time that you as a person spend to really get it out of your head, because your brain is a terrible filing cabinet and it's a terrible system. And you've got to get it out of there so that you can look at it all and then, take the next step. So great exercise.
So what would you say now, looking back on that whole journey, that whole experience, so that 25 year time period of, hey, these experiences got me to where I'm at. What were some of those key points that you say like, hey, without that, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am?
Well, one of the things that I get asked a lot is, if you could go back 25 years and give yourself advice based on what you know today, that kind of ties in with what you're asking, I think, a little bit. One of the ones that is the first answer I give every single time is, you've got to find somebody that can be your counsel, a coach, a mentor, a guide, somebody who is willing to help you, to be in your court, to advise you, to whatever level it is, and whatever it is. It could be sports or business or your life. But I look back on all the different coaches and mentors that I've had. I've easily had, 15, 16, 17 over the last 25 years, and I still do today. And I probably will until the day I die. I just can't imagine life without having that group around me to be able to help me see things that I don't see, that are right in front of my face, but I don't see them. I'm not, it's so hard to describe that sometimes. It's almost, I just want to blurt it out to people and go, look, just trust me on this. It's the best thing you can ever do for yourself, the best investment you can ever make. And it doesn't mean you have to pay people money to do it. In some cases you do, because, time is valuable, right? It's a valuable commodity. And the older we get, the more our time is valuable. At least that's what I've definitely learned over the years. And that's kind of the second part. Find a coach and mentor, somebody in whatever it is in your life that you're trying to achieve or excel at, to get better, to maybe shortcut, right? The wheel's already been created. Don't reinvent it. Have someone who is kind of where you want to be and willing to help you, and then give in that relationship, because it's got to be a two-way street. So that's the first thing. The other one is time. And when I say time had no value to me when I was in my 20s. Time had no value to me when I was in my 30s. Yes, I was married and I was having kids and, growing a family, but I didn't value time at all. All I did was put a value on money. And what that did is it took me away from opportunities, experiences, relationships that I can never get back. And I don't have regret for it. I'm trying to not allow that to happen as I go forward in life. And I hope it is something that, when other people listen to this and start making some of those decisions for themselves as they go forward, that they somehow get that, understanding of their time. Your time is worth something. It's worth a lot. You may not think it today because you don't have anything going on, or you don't have any deals, or you're just kind of like, well, I've got all this time. Okay, that's great. But with a proper vision that you've been able to identify how you want to live your life in whatever direction it is, then that time will be well spent. But if you don't have something you can bounce that up against, right? A plan, a vision, whatever you want to call it, goals, then your time will have less value, because it'll just kind of go by the wayside. You'll go week to week and go, what did I do last week? And another week's gone. And trust me, guys, whoever's listening to this, I still find myself in that. I'm not perfect. I still have days and weeks and times that I go, what did I do today? I spent a lot of time and I found myself working a lot. Did I really need to, or did I just get off course a little bit? And so there's those course corrections, but with other people around me, they help me remember that. They help remind me. The books I'm reading help me to continue to, get back to true north quicker than when I was younger. I'd get off path for a year or two and all of a sudden go, where am I? I don't even know how I got here. And then you start back, and now 2 years just went by, and you kind of reboot and keep going.
Yeah. It's kind of funny as you were talking about the people being around you, because you're right. It's so important. And you're making a choice either way, whether you realize it or not. And 2 I words with these people, they're going to end up around you. You can be intentional about it. You can choose the people that you want, or it can be an intervention when they say like, hey, something's got to change here for you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
might as well choose who it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the vision for what you're doing next? Where are you going?
at my point in life right now with my kids, I've got two of my boys. I got 3 boys, and 2 of them are out of school and kind of getting themselves into their world. And I've got one left in the house, be here for a couple, 3 years. And, you know, with the RIA, that's been growing. I've got a really, really good team, sharp CEO that's really kind of helping guide things in a different direction, and, you know, a great support staff on that. And it's been really fun because I've been able to start pulling away from the minutia of the day-to-day and starting to do the things that I love to do. And that's teaching classes and coaching new, young, whatever age, I don't care, people that are just hungry, right? They want to do better. They want to do more. They're stuck for whatever reason. I just love spending time with those folks. And more than anything right now, if I really had to zero in on that, Reese, it's really the young, the 20-somethings. Right now, I've got probably 6 different, actually they're all guys, but 6 guys that I'm working with that are all between the age of 18 and like 26. And literally working with them, and every single day is a teachable moment. And it's so cool because the stuff that I take for granted, that I just go through the day, I talk to a seller on the phone and I have a conversation about maybe buying a house or a rental property that we're doing a turnover because someone moved out, and, well, how much do we fix or not fix to raise the rent, or, you know, change something to get the next tenant in there so we can get our NOI up so it cash flows better. And these are little things I don't think about anymore because I've been doing them so long. But every time they happen now, I'm like, all right, I send out a calendar invite to the guys. I'm like, all right, I'm meeting on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. We're going to go walk through a unit on an 8-unit building, and we're going to figure out what it takes to do it. And I said, you guys want to come? Shadow me, shadow me, shadow me, shadow me. And so between that and going out and, you know, helping people look at different properties, and I say all this from a real estate standpoint, but it also is from the financial standpoint. It's, you know, helping these guys look at a personal financial statement and go, you know, what is that? What are they doing with their credit? Do they need good credit? Does it matter? How is it impacted? And so little stuff like that just, you know, come out where it used to be, you know, I'd teach classes or do coaching stuff maybe a couple times a month in a session where we get together. And I still do that. But now with these younger guys, what I'm seeing is there's opportunities every single day. Challenge them to read books, you know, to go read this and, you know, let's talk about it, or to listen to some different audio series or a podcast or something to just get their mind going down that path of, you know, what's possible. And so that's a big collective part. I mean, yes, I want to buy more rentals, and, you know, I know I'll do more, probably some flips and wholesales, just because it keeps me sharp at the RIA so that I can continue to teach and train on those types of things, you know, for the new people coming in.
That's great. I know it's going to work. I've seen what you've done already, so that's awesome. So you've got one of the most impressive personal book collections I've seen out of anybody. What, if you could narrow it down, what is one book you would say would change someone's life?
You know, we just had a segment on it here. The one thing is a book that I've got a few books that I basically, anybody that comes into my coaching program, anyone that I start working with brand new, the first 2 books that I recommend to everybody is The Slight Edge and The One Thing. Because whether you're in real estate or business or just anything in life, both of those books, I have no doubt if you take them and apply even a few of the things in it, it will make a difference in your life today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. Because The Slight Edge alone it's just about the little things. Most people, me included, we give very little value to very little things, action items or to-dos, or just the habit stuff that, you know, if we do every day. I mean, a simple one, you know, the little habits of life, brushing your teeth and flossing. You know, it's just one of those things where you you would hope and think everybody does that every day. I know people that don't. And is it hard to do? No. It's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do, right? And so that's kind of the whole concept of the book, is things that are so easy for us to do. If I could easily eat a Big Mac every single day, and is that going to be good for me in the long run? Well, it's not going to kill me in 30 days, but probably not going to be looking good at the gym in about 6 months or 12 months. But it's easy to do it because I can just go buy it and eat it, and I'm satisfied for lunch. Well, maybe not satisfied, but I ate lunch either way.
Yeah.
But it's also just easy to go, that's not a good choice. I can have something else. And that one little decision in eating, magnified over days, months, years, will have a huge impact on our world. And so there's so many great principles in The Slight Edge that it's why I give it to everybody. And I really recommend it highly to every single person that's listening to this podcast. And then the one thing is kind of what we talked about. It's if you find you're in life just trying to figure out, I got all this stuff going on and I'm not really going one direction. I'm kind of scattered and nothing's really happening. Read that book and you apply the principles to really focusing in. And I think you'll be not only reinvigorated, but you'll get excited again about the things you're doing, because you'll find there's one of them probably that can be, as the book calls it, your lead domino. And that will be the one that when you tip that first one, it just it's all the rest down the road. So those are two big books for me in general.
That's perfect. So do you listen to podcasts?
I do listen to podcasts, listen to a bunch of them.
So what podcast would you say you can't live without? There's a lot of them I listen to, and I'm kind of a jumper. So I jump around to a lot of different podcasts. From in the real estate realm, the one that I've been listening to the most is Joe Fairless, which is the best ever real estate investing podcast. It's the only, well, I don't know if it's the only, but it's the longest running daily podcast. He has literally been doing that for 6 years, every single day for 6 years straight. It's insane pace. But he's got a lot of great content now. He's really a big multifamily guy. But he's got a lot of other people that, he brings on board to have interviews with that really have a lot of different good topics. And so that one's been a really good one I enjoy. Bigger Pockets is another one that, because of their space of where they hold in the real estate world, I recommend people plug into Bigger Pockets because they just have a really big, they cast a wide net. And so there's some good content on there as well. But I don't know if there's any one that if you took it away from me, I would, curl up in a ball. But I listen to a lot of different ones because I'm always, trying to shift. And it depends on what I'm, kind of in the mood for, right? If I want some personal development or getting things done. David Allen is a podcast that I've really plugged into lately, the GTDers, and been spending a lot of time in that realm. So I actually listen to a lot of that right now because it's something I'm finding extremely valuable and in my world for, again, getting the clutter out of my head and getting things a little more systematized. Perfect. So is there anything you'd like to promote?
Gosh, I know this podcast is going out all over the country. I don't know if there's anything really. I mean, obviously, I'm always promoting my RIA because I think it's a great resource. We do a lot of work to try to bring in a lot of good content and to allow people to have an environment where they can come in and be comfortable and they can grow at their pace. And obviously, if you have listeners all over the country, that's not going to be a fit for them. But I guess what I would promote is RIAs in general, that if, again, you're in the world of real estate, and I know all your listeners are not, but if you're in the real estate world or you're thinking you want to be in the real estate space today, tomorrow, somewhere down the road, I would strongly encourage you to find a local RIA and be able to plug in, because that association is really key for your growth and for what you want to do, whether you know it or not. A lot of people don't know what they don't know, and the best way to start to understand that and unravel it is to get around other people. And there's RIAs all over the country. So I would promote for all the other RIAs. That's always a good thing, because I know education, you'll put yourself in such a better spot to be protecting you and your family if you have the education to go forward. Too many people get hyped up, and they get the guys who come into town for 2 hours and they're just sell. And what I love about our RIA is that, I invite people in, no cost, no obligation, just come and meet some people in our local community that buy and sell real estate. And if you're interested, then awesome. You don't have to spend 25 grand, and you can get a lot of education. So I won't get on my soapbox about that, but that's a tough one, because I do love promoting the RIA, because it's great. It can be a great resource for people all over. So that's what I'll promote today.
Absolutely. That's where I got my start. So it's a great place. So, where you mentioned your coaching and your RIA and different things, where can people reach out if they want to talk to you about coaching or get more knowledge, or maybe they just have some questions?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody can call me. The best way to contact me probably would be my email, and that's just Chris Hake, ChrisHake @gmail.com. And once you get plugged in through there, I mean, our website, at the RIA, Madison, REIA.com, which will kind of, I guess, enlighten people on some of the different things we're doing, which if you're in a different area of the country, again, that's why I say plug into those. And then with regard to coaching, I do love coaching. I love teaching, and I love working with people who I find I can be a fit for, because it's got to be a two-way street, for that relationship to go. Because I don't work with a ton of people, but I do find there's been some really great relationships that I've made with people that I've watched them grow. I mean, you and Ashley are a great example. Look at you now. You're doing podcasts and you got all sorts of stuff going, and that's awesome. And sometimes we just need a little help and a little direction, and to get us from point A to point B, C, D down the road. And, it's out there. Just got to look for it, and you got to be open to, plugging yourself in.
I'm going to have to find some better adjectives. Awesome and perfect. They seem to be my go-to, but awesome. So lastly, what action should a viewer or listener take right now?
Oh, well, it's interesting. My first meeting of the year that we just did at our RIA, I did a quick video that we sent out before we had our meeting. This was like 2 weeks ago. And that was, the one word was action, just what you said. So what are people doing to take action? Well, part of that action is understanding, what you're trying to do, okay? So it's easy enough to say, yep, I'm going to take action. But if you don't have your definition of what that is, you're going to be short-lived, okay? There's all the New Year's resolutions, and everyone starts out January 1st, and by January 30th, they're done, because they hit a couple walls, and that'll knock anybody off if you don't have a reason to go through the wall and go over the wall or go under the wall or go around the wall. And that gets back to having a why. So taking an action step on something is probably, in big part, just making a decision that you're going to take action, and then connecting that with your why. Why are you going after whatever? I want to go to the gym, or I want to lose 10 pounds, or whatever it is. Is it a big enough why, or is it like, yeah, it'd be nice to lose 10 pounds? Well, the first sign of, somebody putting a cream puff in front of you, at dessert, you're going to crumble, because your why isn't big enough, right? So you've got to have a big enough reason. And then as part of taking that action, again, decision leads to the action, but you got to have some people around you that are going to help support you. So whatever your action item is, it doesn't have to be the first of the year. That's the good news, okay? We're past the first of the year now. The next day can be a new day. Today, right now, can be the start of drawing a line in the sand and stepping over and doing something different, better, whether it's for you or for somebody else, it doesn't matter. But make the decision to do it, have a reason, a why, know what it is, and then start. Just take the action and just do one. Don't try to get a list of, I'm going to do these 10 things. Jack of all trades, master of none. And that's the problem, is that people try to pull all this stuff together and go, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do that. And they've got this huge list of stuff, and they do a little bit of each, and nothing ever gets done, or nothing ever gets done well. And so I challenge people on the podcast right now to pick one thing, something that's just been burning in you that you want to do. It could be small, it could be big, it doesn't matter. Make that decision and back it up by a reason, a why, the purpose, because it's not a question of if, but when you hit a snag in life that'll derail most people. And the ones that I watch get around those problems are the ones who had a big enough reason where they just knew they're not going to let a little bump in the road or a little brick wall stand in their way, because what they want is powerful enough that they're willing to, do I have to scale it? Well, maybe I need a ladder. Maybe I need someone's help. What if I get a truck and drive through it? Now I blow up the bricks and I can get around the other side. You figure it out. You do what you got to do, because the reason getting on the other side of the wall is more important than stopping at the wall and walking back and going home. So take the action, make your decision, get some help around you, find somebody. They're out there. You have plenty of them. You just got to look for them and ask. I find that when you start asking people for help, people in general are very, very open to helping. But I think most of us are afraid to ask.
Man, I really hope the people listening rewind and listen again, because that was right on. So
Cool.
thanks, Chris. Appreciate having you on.
Yeah, that was great. I'm happy to come back anytime, and I was listening to some of the previous podcasts. I know a couple of the folks, and good stuff. So proud of you. Good stuff getting this out there. And again, you took the action and you just started it, and here you go, man. You're cranking now. So best to you and Ashley and the kids.
Thank you very much.
All right, bud.
Before you go, if you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion about how you can get more fulfillment out of your life, I'm hosting free one-on-one, 1-hour conversations to help you get more out of your life. Let's help you get out of your golden handcuffs. If you want to set up an appointment, reach out to me at ghg@goldenhandcuffsguy.com. We'll set something up, get this going, and get you out of your golden handcuffs. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a rating on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever platform you're listening on. If you want to see more, go to goldenhandcuffsguy.com, where you have access to my blog, my podcasts, and a bunch of other information to help you remove your golden handcuffs.